Hey everyone, this is Crime Notes. I am Mary, and welcome to our latest program. Today we're focusing on a famous Japanese case that shook the nation back in 1997. It involves a young female office worker from a well-to-do family who earned an impressive 13 million yen annually, but turned to streetwalker after work. In order to attract customers, she offered discounts on her services despite her sweet looks and beautiful body. Tragically, one day she was brutally murdered. The investigation by Japanese police caused quite a stir as the suspect's sentence was changed several times amidst public outcry. So why did this career woman turn to prostitution, and who exactly is responsible for her death? This case has garnered widespread attention not just in Japan, but around the world. The incident took place in Sonoyama-cho, Shibuya-ku, Tokyo's capital city, where Japan's erotic industry flourished at that time. Despite having less than 2,000 residents, this small neighborhood had over 300 custom stores. Places where prostitutes and clients conducted business transactions were commonplace back then. In the local vicinity, Ram, originally from Nepal, had established a Japanese-style restaurant in Japan and also managed an adjacent apartment complex. He frequently rented out any spare rooms that were available. During his commute back from the restaurant to his personal abode, Ram often indulged in the dulcet and captivating moans of a young woman. Having left his wife behind, he had journeyed a great distance from Nepal to Japan in search of a better life. These sounds brought an unusual and alluring pleasure to Ram's fatigued day. However, on March 19th, 1997, something happened that caught Ram off guard. As he passed by room 101 that evening, he noticed the woman inside lying motionless on the floor just as she had been yesterday. At first, Ram thought perhaps she had simply fallen asleep drunk again and didn't pay much attention to it. But when he returned the next day and found her still lying there without moving, alarm bells began ringing in his head. Ram's unease grew stronger with each passing moment as he realized that this was not good for business. After all, he had diligently saved his earnings to obtain this apartment complex, and any untoward happening within it would prove ruinous. With little time to spare, Ram pushed open the unlocked door of room 101. What he found was disturbing: a woman lying on the floor, not breathing. He immediately called for help, and upon further inspection by the police, it was discovered that she had been strangled to death. There were no signs of struggle or theft in the house, and it appeared that she had died 10 days prior to being found on March 9, 1997. Through her handbag next to her body, authorities identified her as Watanabe Teiko, a single and unmarried 39-year-old who held a high-ranking position as head of investigation in the planning department at Tokyo Electric Power Company. She was considered an elite female professional in her workplace. Beside her body lay an opened handbag containing only a few hundred yen in change and some women's daily necessities. However, what caught police attention was a small black notebook inside which turned out to be records of pickups leading them down another path in their investigation. On the floor of the bedroom, forensics discovered 22 human pubic hairs, and in the bathroom, a used condom was found knotted. As the police investigated further, they learned that Taiko Watanabe was born into a life of privilege, but had fallen on hard times after her father's untimely death. Despite this setback, Watanabe had managed to climb to the top of Japan's female corporate ladder with an impressive annual salary of 13 million yen in 1997 alone, equivalent to $85,000 USD at that time. This achievement was particularly noteworthy given Japan's male-dominated society. The circumstances surrounding Watanabe's violent death as a prostitute were perplexing and raised many questions about how someone with such an illustrious career could meet such a tragic end. Adding to the mystery was her mother's cold reaction upon hearing about her daughter's murder. Despite numerous visits and investigations by police officers, no satisfactory answers were forthcoming from colleagues who described Watanabe as enigmatic and obsessed with cleanliness. In one shocking discovery made by investigators searching through Watanabe's workstation drawer, they uncovered what appeared to be an agreement for sexual services, almost like a contract for selling one's own body. At this point, the police had gathered a number of clues that could potentially solve the case. There were sex marks at the murder scene, pick-up notes on a notepad, and a strange sexual relationship agreement. The Japanese police were confident that they would soon crack the case wide open. However, what happened next was completely unexpected. Based on forensic evidence, it was determined that Taiko Watanabe was killed in the middle of the night on March 8th the Me. This led investigators to focus their attention on 3 potential suspects. The first suspect was identified as the last person recorded in Watanabe's small black notebook, but he was quickly ruled out as a suspect. The remaining 2 suspects were Ram, who owned and rented out room 101 where Watanabe's murder took place, and Govinda Prasad Mainali, a 30-year-old man from Nepal who had been living illegally in Japan after his visa expired. When questioned by police officers about his involvement with Watanabe's death, Govinda denied ever having seen her before. It is worth noting that it can be difficult for people to distinguish between individuals of different races or ethnicities, for example. When shown photos of Americans, Japanese people may need to study them closely to make accurate identifications. Ram and Govinda both hailed from Nepal and had come to Japan seeking work opportunities. While Ram often lent out room 101 to friends visiting from his hometown or elsewhere for temporary stays, Govinda rented an apartment near where Watanabe's murder occurred while working at a local restaurant. Despite initial suspicions surrounding these 2 men due to their proximity to the crime scene and connections with each other, based on police records, Govinda's behavior during questioning raised suspicions. When shown a photo of Taiko Watanabe, he simply claimed to have never seen her before, despite her being an attractive woman that one would expect a man to take notice of. Further investigation revealed that Govinda had offered to rent room 101 from the landlord Ram, who was also from his hometown. Shortly before the murder occurred, Ram had traveled back to Nepal and entrusted Govinda with the key to room 101. When forensic evidence was analyzed at the crime scene, it was discovered that semen found in a condom belonged to Govinda, and some of the pubic hair found in the bedroom matched his DNA profile. Additionally, eyewitness descriptions matched Govinda's physical appearance. As a result of this evidence, Japanese prosecutors charged Govinda with premeditated murder and brought him to trial. However, during his trial proceedings, he became agitated and insisted on his innocence, claiming that he lied about not knowing Taiko Watanabe because he did not want to be deported for engaging in prostitution. Govinda's defense lawyer pointed out several facts, which cast doubt on whether or not he could have committed the crime. Firstly, there was significant distance between his workplace and where Watanabe's murder took place, making it unlikely for him to have been present at both locations around the time of her death. Secondly, prior to her death, Govinda had given room 101 key back Ram through another roommate, which suggested someone else may have been present in room 101 before or after Watanabe's murder. This raises an interesting question known as the crime dilemma. Just because someone is present at or near a crime scene does not necessarily mean they are responsible for committing it, as evidenced by cases where individuals leave behind traces such as DNA or fingerprints without actually being involved in any wrongdoing themselves. It's not a certainty that the man is guilty, as it's possible that someone could have erased their own traces after killing the woman and then framed him. Such cases have been reported worldwide. However, after collecting a large number of traces from the man, police tend to make him a key suspect, which is what happened in this case. Even though both the semen found in the bathroom and pubic hair found in the bedroom belong to Govinda, we can't directly conclude that he is the murderer. The Japanese police have come up with new ideas regarding this case. Firstly, Govinda was unable to provide an accurate account of when he handed over his key to his roommate on that day. Secondly, forensic medical examination of semen found in the bathroom indicated that Govinda left it around 8th of March. Thirdly, Govinda was able to travel from his workplace to where the crime took place within a specified time frame, which could still be achieved with suitable means of transport. In particular, points 2 and 3 prove that Govinda had full capability of committing such a crime. However, defense counsel immediately rejected these arguments as being too hypothetical. Just as the heated back and forth between the prosecution and defense hit a dead end, Govinda's 2 roommates stepped in to break the tension. According to them, Govinda had borrowed 100,000 yen from one of them. When pressed by his roommate, Govinda admitted he still owed 30,000 yen and requested more time to gather the funds. Later that evening, on March 8th, Govinda brought Taiko Watanabe back to their dormitory, where all 3 took turns attending to their respective matters. However, it was in the early hours of that same day when Taiko Watanabe met a brutal demise. From the deceased's black notebook, police discovered she had earned approximately 100,000 yen from her clients that day. Yet when her body was found, her wallet contained only loose change. Interestingly enough, on the following day, Govinda suddenly had enough money to settle his roommate's loan of 100,000 yen. It's peculiar how he managed to acquire an extra 30,000 yen in cash within a single day, especially when compared with Taiko Watanabe's earnings of 40,000 yen on that fateful day. Based on these circumstances and evidence gathered from investigations by Japanese authorities led them to deduce that it was highly probable for Govinda to have murdered Taiko Watanabe and then taken possession of her earnings for himself. However, as the Japanese police made this speculation, they had to acknowledge a crucial fact: the presence of a third person's pubic hair on the bedroom floor at the crime scene. These circumstances were impossible for Japanese authorities to ignore. In April 2000, 2 years after the crime occurred, Govinda was acquitted due to insufficient evidence by Tokyo court in Japan. But did this mark an end to the case? Absolutely not. Most people believed that acquittal was only natural, given insufficient evidence. However, it was precisely this verdict that left Japanese prosecutors and judiciary infuriated. Just 5 days after Govinda's acquittal, Tokyo District Prosecutor's Office filed an appeal against it. A few months later, the same judge who had previously handed down a not guilty verdict in Govinda's first trial was removed from his position. According to Japanese netizens' speculations at that time, certain government departments were very unhappy with Judge's decision and thus led to his removal from office. 3 years after the crime, in December 2000, the Tokyo High Court delivered a verdict in Govinda's second trial, finding him guilty of murder and sentencing him to life imprisonment. The evidence presented was compelling. Police discovered numerous traces belonging to Govinda at the crime scene, as well as a large sum of cash from unknown sources after Taiko Watanabe's murder. Almost overnight, Govinda went from being on top of the world to being locked up behind bars for life. However, his fate was not sealed just yet. After being sentenced to life imprisonment, Govinda continued searching for a lawyer who could help him appeal his case. It wasn't until 2012, 12 years into his incarceration, that new evidence came to light. Forensic analysis revealed that DNA from a third person was found inside Taiko Watanabe's vagina and under her fingernails. This DNA did not match either Ram, the landlord, or Govinda. This same DNA was also present in the pubic hair found on bedroom floor 101, where Taiko Watanabe had been murdered. This crucial piece of evidence indicated that there was indeed another person involved in Taiko Watanabe's murder who had sexually assaulted her prior to her death, and it definitely wasn't Govinda. In addition to this important discovery regarding DNA evidence, Govinda's lawyer also uncovered several significant flaws with the police investigation at that time, and added these points into their argument for appeal. Firstly, the police were unable to find any credible witnesses who had actually seen Govinda on the day of the murder. Based on eyewitness testimony at the scene, they concluded that Govinda entered Taiko Watanabe's flat at around 11:30 p.m. that night. However, at the time of the incident, Govinda had been working at a restaurant located in Chiba-ken since morning. Chiba-ken is relatively close to Tokyo, however. In terms of time and space, it would have been difficult for him to arrive at the scene of crime during that time. If he got off work around 10:30 p.m. and traveled from his workplace's nearest station to Shibuya-ku in Tokyo, it would have taken him at least an hour. After that, he would have had to walk to the crime scene where he probably wouldn't arrive until midnight. This doesn't correspond with what eyewitnesses stated about when they saw someone entering Taiko Watanabe's flat. In short, Govinda should have a credible alibi based on these facts alone. Secondly, a few days before Taiko Watanabe's body was found, the landlord Ram had gone in to check the windows and door of the room where the murder took place because they were unlocked. This means that during that period, anyone could freely enter and leave the room without a key. Additionally, Govinda had asked his friend to return the key to Ram and pay rent long before Taiko Watanabe's murder. Therefore, Govinda had no money problems at all. It is unlikely he would have killed her for financial gain. He lacked a clear motive for committing such a crime. The last point is more theoretical. If Govinda really was Taiko Watanabe's murderer, then why would he have left her body in the flat for up to 10 days? It seems unusual that he would continue living in an apartment so close to where he committed such a serious crime. In this way, Japanese police could not directly conclude that Govinda was responsible for Taiko Watanabe's death. Therefore, in 2012, he was acquitted for a second time. After his release from Japanese prison, he was repatriated directly back to Nepal and received compensation of 68 million yen from the Japanese government as reparation for his unlawful imprisonment of 15 years. This incident is considered by many as one of Japan's most significant miscarriages of justice. If this case were tried today with Nepal being anything but an ordinary country status-wise, it could even lead to diplomatic tensions between both nations. Now let's turn our attention back to the victim, Taiko Watanabe, and see if we can uncover any new clues. Unfortunately, it seems that there is more mystery surrounding the deceased than the suspect. The most perplexing aspect of Taiko Watanabe's case is why a woman who earned an annual salary of 13 million yen in 1998 would engage in prostitution after work. According to her colleagues, Taiko was a woman full of enigmas. She barely ate at the company cafeteria during the week and had a drawer full of vitamin tablets due to her severe anorexia. Additionally, she had a habit of going to the bathroom frequently during work hours to wash her hands, and was known for having a severe cleanliness fetish. Given these habits and behaviors, it was beyond their comprehension that someone like Taiko would work as a prostitute after hours. This only adds another layer of complexity to this already mysterious case. Furthermore, Taiko Watanabe's colleagues had the impression that in the early days, she worked very hard at her job, which was in sharp contrast to the mainstream image of Japanese women as housewives at that time. Despite her hard work, for some reason, Taiko's upward mobility in the workplace seemed to have come to a sudden halt. The company only placed her in a vanity position, and later on, no matter how busy the company was, she would always leave work on time. Almost overnight, Taiko went from being a strong woman who used to fight hard for her career to an ordinary employee with no ambition. What is even more coincidental is that during this drastic career change period is when Taiko started working as a prostitute in Shibuya district. Some people speculated that perhaps she resorted to selling herself because of some kind of stimulation or trigger. At that time, Japan was still considered a feudal society where men were superior and women were expected to behave according to societal expectations, be good and dignified on the outside, while being good mothers and wives inside their homes. However, there are many women like Taiko who have different facets than what they show publicly. Perhaps she didn't necessarily want or need money from prostitution since she already earned more than most people per year. It's possible that by transforming into a streetwalker at night after being an elite worker during daytime hours was her way of expressing dissatisfaction and resistance towards reality. As for what could have triggered such behavior, it could be due to various factors such as her father's death due to illness or male suppression at work, or even marital problems. All these questions remain unanswered without any precise answers available. Now let's get back to the ultimate question, in this case, who is the murderer? In my opinion, the murderer is likely an acquaintance of Taiko Watanabe. There have been cases all over the world where Johns kill prostitutes, mostly due to disagreements over price or because of perverted hobbies. However, Taiko's prices were often lower than her peers, and her appearance was not worse than others, making it unlikely that a John killed her because of price. As for the possibility of a psychopathic killer like Robert Pickton, who targeted prostitutes in Canada, there were no serial killings of prostitutes in Shibuya at that time, so it's unlikely that this was a motive for murder. So what could be the motive? I personally speculate that perhaps the murderer was an acquaintance of Taiko Watanabe. It's worth noting here about Taiko's workplace situation. Information made public by Japanese media shows that Taiko's father also worked for Tokyo Electric Power and opposed nuclear energy development during discussions on fluctuating international oil prices at that time. After his death, Taiko joined his former company and inherited his legacy opposing nuclear power plant construction by government authorities, which put her at odds with certain senior executives within the company. Therefore, is it possible someone was jealous of Taiko Watanabe's influence and secretly killed her? Could they have used her prostitution activities as a cover-up for murder? It may not be impossible. Certainly, in our previous discussion, it seems we may have overlooked an important figure, Ram, the owner of the cuisine shop who reported the case to the police and also happened to be the landlord of room 101. However, Public information indicates that Ram had already returned to his home country before the murder took place, which led to him being ruled out as a suspect. Since neither Ram nor Govinda's DNA matched with that of the third person found in room 101, could we potentially trace this unknown DNA to identify the murderer? Unfortunately, not everyone's DNA was registered at the police station at that time. As a result, this case eventually became a famous, unsolved mystery in Japan and remains unresolved to this day. Upon returning to Japan, Govinda issued a statement asserting his innocence. I am now proven innocent due to recent judgment. This marks my second acquittal. It has become clear that my initial not guilty verdict was indeed correct. While I am relieved by this outcome, I also carry deep feelings of regret. Why did I have to endure this pain for 15 years? Japanese police, prosecutors, and courts, please reflect on these events and rectify any injustices. Let me be the last person subjected to such wrongful imprisonment. For Govinda, no amount of compensation can ever recover those lost years due to Japanese justice. What are your thoughts on this case? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section below. We look forward to hearing from you. Stay tuned for our next episode.